Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to May's Interval Training. I'm Rebecca Campbell, Senior Director at Peloton. Thank you for joining today's training, which is all around intelligent performance management. The format for today is roughly 20 minutes of an overview by my colleague Harold Hayward, followed by a few minutes of Q&A. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Everyone will be muted during the training and chat will be disabled. Please put your questions in the Q&A and we will get to them after the training. If you have additional questions or we were not able to get to your question today, please feel free to reach out to us. And if you have ideas for future trainings you'd like to see, please let us know. Without further ado, let's get into IPM. Over to you, Harold.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Rebecca. So hello, welcome to another Peloton interval training. We are happy to have everyone here. As Rebecca said, my name is Harold Hayward. I'm an EPM implementation specialist with Peloton Consulting Group. And today I'm happy to bring you a short introductory session on Oracle's latest AI technology for planning called Intelligent Performance Management, or IPM for short. If you have an existing EPM or planning environment and are looking to get more out of it, or just leverage the latest and greatest technology, then this is definitely a great session for you to learn more. If you're brand new to Oracle EPM or just experiencing EPM for the first time, this is also a great session for you because you can find out what planning AI is capable of and how it might potentially benefit your business. If you have any questions, save them until the end and I'll be happy to answer them and return back to any content that we cover. So some Oracle AI solutions overview. Right now, Oracle EPM has 3 different AI technologies integrated into it. These are Intelligent Performance Management, or IPM, as we'll call it from now on, Predictive Planning, and Narrative Generation. IPM is made up of 3 different components: Anomalies, Predictions, and Forecast Variance and Bias Insights, all 3 of which we'll explore shortly. There's also Predictive Planning, which enables on-the-fly planning trends and calculations. While users are using forms to plan out their data, we won't be covering that today. And then lastly, we have narrative generation, which uses AI to produce summaries of data within narrative reporting, which we'll also not be covering today. So what are some of the use cases? Why should we use these AI technologies? What do we get out of them? And how can they help augment our human planners to make them more effective? So first off, we can compare and contrast AI and human-generated data sets, looking for variances, discrepancies, and possible hidden biases, such as chronically over or under forecasting certain data sets. We can analyze large data sets quickly, looking for outliers to start conversations with our business partners, such as why were my actuals so much higher or lower this month? What's going on there? We can run system-wide trended budgets or forecasts to seed data for our planners, giving them a jump start on timing. And we can generate reporting summaries for different situations. So in summary, all of this helps us make better business decisions. Given our use cases, what are the results? We can reduce time spent in data analysis. I always like to say that we're giving people more value-added time back. We can improve forecast accuracy. We can encourage collaboration and discussion within our teams. And we can detect trends early to enhance our decision-making. So to recap what we're covering today, we can look at the functionality box here. Anomaly insights will help us detect unusual patterns within our data. Auto predict will give us a possible glimpse into the future. And prediction insights and forecast variance and bias insights will compare and contrast AI versus human-generated data. What I like to tell my clients when we're discussing IPM is, don't just be a finance specialist or a technologist. You can now be a data scientist too. So what are some of the requirements and steps to configure IPM? Jumping into the technology itself, I first like to talk about the steps we use to configure to our clients' needs. The first requirement to leverage the planning AI technology is to have an established planning environment, complete with data sets ready to be analyzed. If you don't have an EPM planning environment, we'd be happy to partner with you to build one together. It is my specialty after all. And I also have linked here the Oracle documentation, which is a helpful reference for any first-time users. This can be helpful when you're first configuring IPM, or if you're already a technical admin learning how to get the most out of Oracle's AI tools for your business and application. I'm going to jump over to the documentation now. So here is one of the home pages as part of the documentation for configuring IPM. And I have jumped down to the IPM Insights page. This page has a lot of great information about IPM Insights, and I definitely encourage you to go read it on your own if you're interested. As we scroll down a little bit, we get different summaries and descriptions of what each piece is and how it operates and what we can get out of it. So definitely check those out if you're interested as each piece. And as we scroll further down, we can see a few nicely laid out examples. And if I go all the way to the bottom, Oracle has kindly provided us with some video content to continue our education. So how do we set up IPM? The steps I like to go through are as follows. Number one, understanding your data set. So while the AI is very valuable in collecting information and giving it back to us, it's only going to be as good as the questions that we can ask it. So what information is valuable to you? What are you looking to understand more about? Who is the audience for your insights? And are you looking at the whole business? Are we pushing for specific insights from individual planners? Maybe we just want to focus on OpEx or CapEx or margins. The first step is really understanding what and where you might want to start your investigations. Then, once you have a handle on the basics, you can widen your scope and explore. I always like to say that when we're first diving into IPM, that we're putting on our detective hats and digging into the data. So the next step is to configure events. We can tell the AI about different events that we're having, such as holidays that might impact our data, maybe increased consumer spending during different parts of the year, or different holidays in different parts of the world that we might want to tell the AI about to tag to different parts of our calculations. After we've established our events, we can configure calendars. So we'll configure the calendars to tell the AI what historical data we'd like to use, how far out in the future we might like to predict. And we can also tie different events to different calendars to further customize how the AI interacts with our data. Once those have been set up, we can then begin leveraging our different AI components, which we'll take a look at in system shortly. And lastly, after we've run all that, we can analyze the outputs, and that's really the fun part. So let's jump into the system and take a look. So here we are on the homepage of the application. I won't go into too much detail around this specific application or its dimensionality and data. This was built as part of our CPG or Consumer Packaged Goods Accelerator, so it's focused on that, but the same principles will apply to anyone's application. So let's click into our AI cluster. So here we have curated the views, and we have 3 different sections for insights, for configure, and predictive forecast. We're going to focus on insights and predictive forecast, and we'll skip over configure for now, but if there's some additional questions, we can always come back over there. So let's go to the insights page. All right. There is a lot going on the screen right now. And what I'm going to start with is using some of my filters to figure out what we want to go see and look at. So I'm going to click the type filter and have that say anomaly. And we're going to start there. So down below, we have some of our insights laid out, displaying our impact percentage, our impact currency, some details around where in the application we might have generated an insight. So with us being filtered on anomaly, I've set up the AI to run anomaly detection over our latest month of actuals. So let's go take a look at what we've uncovered. So in this case, let's see, our actual sales are 11% higher in March, or our gross margin was 13% higher in May. Let's go take a look at that one. So I can click on the hyperlink and it's going to open up a nice graph for me. So what is the AI doing in the background to figure out that this data might be an anomaly? It's running different statistical models in the background to find the best fit for the data, and then applying that model to the data and figuring out what might be outside of expectations. We can see that our data mostly falls within certain bounds for the months leading up to our current periods over here. And then the data spikes for whatever reason. So now that the AI has brought us back this insight, this information, we can start asking some questions, such as, was this expected? Is this a new trend? Should I go back and discuss with some of my other business partners? It looks to me, we can hover over and see that May was 55. Maybe last year, for whatever reason, May was 33. So it seems like we're doing pretty good year over year, right? Should I adjust my go forward guidance accordingly? It's now up to you to make a business decision based on this information. I'm going to cancel out of this. And as we look at some of our other anomalies, we see that sales were higher, therefore margins higher, and also our margin was higher as a percentage of revenue. So it seems like we are trending very positively, which I think is good. All right, so that is our first step, which is some of the anomaly detection. And I think that that is the base case that we can take a look at, or that you could implement on your own within your own environment to say, go find me any anomalous data within the system. You might have hundreds of thousands or millions of intersections, and you can ask the AI to go figure out which ones might be important to you and that you might want to pull out and take another look at. So now that we've seen anomalies, let's jump over into our predictive capabilities. So I am going to click on Predictive Forecast over here, and we are going to load up a nice looking dashboard. So we are reviewing a predicted forecast for volume in this specific example. And taking a look at the different colored lines on the graph or in the data table down below, we have a human-generated forecast in forecast working. And we pair that with 3 AI-generated forecasts titled most likely, base case, and worst case. As we discussed with the anomalies, behind the scenes, the AI is again running many complex statistical models across your different data sets, figuring out which ones are going to work best, and then looking for higher average or lower standard deviation results for the data to produce our different predictions. We can always go behind the scenes to get a detailed report of how and why the AI chose what it did, but we'll skip over that for right now and return later. So let's assume that we understand and trust the AI-generated forecast. It's very easy to use and a valuable time-saving tool to trend out large quantities of data into the future. Usually we recommend trending to all of our planning clients, and now it's easier than ever to build out large-scale trending capabilities. What we'll now notice is that the human-generated forecast working seems to be much higher than our AI-generated predictive forecast. Why is that? We can start analyzing the data sets on our own to see what significant deviations there might be, or we could have already asked the AI to do that for us, which I did. So we've learned about anomalies, we've also learned about predictive capabilities, and now we'll look at the comparison insights. So what do the humans know that the AI doesn't, and what does the AI know that the humans might be biased towards? Let's investigate. So I am going to go back to my insights card. And previously, we used the type to look at anomalies. And in this case, I'm going to look at my prediction variances. So here, let's see, we have cookies in the US. And we ran our analysis to say, out into the future, our predicted demand was 16% higher than the forecast. So that means that the AI predicted that the demand volume would be 16% higher than what our human planners had looked at. So again, I'm going to click on my hyperlink here. And we get a nice summary. Cookies for the US entity are going to be much higher than we had initially predicted. So if we start to look at some of these numbers, we might see that maybe the planners had flatlined our cookies out into the future, while the statistical model that the AI came back with has this increasing over time. So I think that this is now a good conversation piece for us to say, why did the AI choose that? Why did humans flatline it? Are we expecting sales growth? Are we not expecting sales growth? We can go back and we can talk to the different planners to start to figure out, why is there a discrepancy? What can we do about it? And how do we take the best of both worlds? So I think that that shows off at a high level what some of the different capabilities are. And now that you've seen the outputs of the technology, we can spend a little bit of time on the configuration. So I'm going to go over to configure, and we can see a little bit behind the scenes how we get to set some of that information up. So here I have my landing page for the different parts of IPM that I am running. And we can see in the bottom left that we have some tabs down here for calendars and events as we set those up. So let's take a look at how we configured our base, best, and worst case trending. So I'm going to click on this here, which ran our auto predict job. And we open up a new tab, and this has a whole bunch of information for us. So as I scroll down, you have your different details, and you can select to auto predict, to run the variances, the prediction insights, the anomaly insights. You can run these all together as one job. For this example, I wanted to run them individually so we could see the results separated slightly in the job console at least. So once you select what type of activity you'd like to do for IPM, you can click on the calendar. And this, you select your calendar from a dropdown, you select your cubes, and it shows you the different dates that you might be running information for both historical data and future data. Calendars also come attached with any events that we've put into, say, the US monthly calendar for this example. Next, we go over to define slice. And in this case, we are looking at our historical data, and then we have our base, best, and worst, where we want to store that information. And you'll see here for version, we are storing our base case and most likely, our best case and best case, and worst case and worst case. Once you've picked out where you want your data to go, there are a few different settings. I'll click Show Advanced Settings. There are some statistical pieces here that you might be interested in, which we don't necessarily have time to cover right now. But once you've configured these different settings, you can run the auto predict and get some trended data. So I am going to cancel out of here. And if you want to look behind the scenes to see how or why some of those calculations were made, you can click on the actions and download a report here, which I've already done. And this is a report, again, I've highlighted this row for the different cases that we were looking at. And if I go over to my report tab, there is a bunch of statistical information here that you might be interested in. So we have our accuracy and method across each piece of dimensionality. So as I scroll down, we leave potato chips and go look at pretzels, cheese sticks, et cetera, et cetera. If I scroll over to the right, there's other statistical information that you may be interested in to help better understand how or why we came up with certain numbers. So just wanted to share that briefly with the group. All right, and I'll shrink that. We'll go back to our application. So to summarize, we've looked at 3 different aspects of IPM. We've looked at anomaly detection to help us find outlying data. We've looked at auto-predict to help us predict out the future, leveraging a flurry of advanced statistical models. And we've also looked at some of our prediction and forecast variance and bias insights to help us compare and contrast our data sets. All 3 of these are easy to set up and valuable ways to augment our human planning capabilities and give everyone involved more value-added time back. So don't miss any outlying data, don't miss out on any advanced trending capabilities, and don't miss out on the opportunity to have great conversations with your business partners to help everyone involved make better business decisions. There's definitely so much more to see and discover and understand when it comes to the AI technology. And hopefully this quick training session has been helpful for you to understand the capabilities and possible benefits that it can provide for your business. So turning it back over to you, Rebecca, any questions or comments from the group on the call?
Yes, and thank you so much, Harold. That was a great presentation. We do have a few questions from the audience. First one is, you mentioned starting small, then expanding your scope. What do you mean by that?
Great question. So that's where I was referring to my detective hat that I like to put on. So first, I like to think about who is the audience for your tool and what are they going to get out of it. So if you're thinking of starting with a handful of planners and kind of getting them started, you can get them started with a small handful of accounts, right? It's very difficult to all of a sudden open up IPM to your entire P&L or your entire balance sheet and start analyzing that data. So I often find it very helpful to think of a few key accounts that you like to take a look at first, really get comfortable with those, and then expand your scope from there.
Great. Next question, who can see the anomalies? How do I grant or restrict access?
Yep, great question. So when we were looking at our anomaly screen, that is going to be tied to the security of the application. So the way I see a lot of clients do this is they might have security by entity. So if I am the North America owner, I can only see the North America entities. If I'm the Asia owner, I can only see the Asia entities. And so since each anomaly is tied to the dimensionality of the system, it's going to honor that security. So as each user logs in, they'll only be able to see anomalies that they have access to.
Okay, great. Makes good sense. How or where can I learn more about how the AI picks the trends?
Yep. So we looked at the statistical report that came out of it, and you'll definitely have to do a little bit of research there. And we have some handy reference tools to figure out what each of those little acronyms means for how it calculates the statistics. So we can reference the Oracle documentation. We can learn a little bit more about how some of the math works. And that's how you can learn how the AI is going to pick out those trends.
Okay, great. 2 more. We got a lot of good questions today. How do you recommend I can get started using IPM with my planners?
Yep. So I think that a very easy way to do that is, as we had discussed previously, is pick out 2 or 3 different very important accounts to you, and then start running through the anomaly detection or running through the predictive insights. At some of my clients, we found that the best way to kind of get started was say, let's pick OpEx or CapEx or margins and just run for a handful of entities that person owns. You end up coming back with a limited number of insights just because you're having a small scope to your data, but you start asking a lot more questions, right? Ooh, hey, my CapEx, was going to be this, and now we're thinking it's something else. Let's predict that out into the future. And then you get excited and you want to start looking at more entities or more accounts. So I think it's a really helpful tool that builds upon itself if you know how to use it.
Excellent. And then final question, What do the configure screens look like? How easy is it to set this up?
Great question. So we're just over there looking through some of those screens. And like we saw, maybe let's go look at the act anomaly, because that's kind of my recommendation for how you get started. So in order to configure an anomaly insight, it can be really, really straightforward. In my type screen, I am just going to select anomaly insights, and that's it. So that's pretty easy. In my calendar, you set up a calendar that has a date range to go back maybe 2 years and go forward maybe a year. So setting up the calendar is pretty easy. You don't really even need any events if you're just getting started. I definitely recommend, say, 2 years of actuals and 1 year out to the future for your calendar range. When you define the slice, again, you have to understand your data. And since we're only looking at actuals here, I'm going to look at, say, actual working. Maybe I select my entity. Maybe I select my brand or customer, something like that. And maybe I want to look at a handful of counts. In this case, sales, gross margin, etc. So if you're familiar with the dimensionality of your application, you just have to make a few minor selections here. And we saw when we looked at the prediction insights that you have a few other columns, but you just select a few places that you like to look in the system. And then if you want to get down to it, you can just hide the advanced settings, and there's not that much for you to select other than some of these methods. Z-score is your standard deviation. So if you are not familiar with that, feel free to look it up. There's a nice bell curve that makes sense. I'd recommend either 1.5, 2, or 3 as your threshold values. I'd be happy to explain more on that later. And then in this case, we have some last settings. And I think here, just your display dimensions are pretty easy. In this case, I liked entity, brand, and customer. So if you're familiar with these screens and you know what you're doing, realistically, you can start generating some of these insights very, very quickly. And I think that that is a very good time to value.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Harold. Well, that wraps up our time together today. Everyone, thank you so much for making the time to be here. Reach out with additional questions and stay tuned for future trainings. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.